Hello and welcome to the Giraffe Social Media Podcast. It's what social media managers are talking about. I'm Caitlin McKenzie and today I'm joined by Jo Austin, Engagement and Marketing Manager at the women's organisation based in Liverpool. Hi Jo, how are you?
Hello there, I'm all right, thanks. Are you
Wonderful.
well?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Not too bad. So where are you joining us from today? Do you live in Liverpool as well as work there?
Yes, yeah, I do. So I'm based in the Sefton part of Liverpool, which is, if you're familiar with the Iron Men on the beach, if you've ever seen them on a TV programme or anything, I live kind of that part of Liverpool City region. And I'm joining you from my bedroom today, as we are all in working from home mood at the minute, aren't we?
Absolutely, yeah, don't worry, I'm in my spare room. No one in the office. Cool. Well, to get us started, I'm going to rattle off a few quick fire questions. This is just like, it sounds daunting, but it's just to help us all get to know you a little bit better. So, question number one, a cup of tea or a cafetiere?
Oh, tea. I'm a northern lass.
Would you rather work from home or in the office?
A mixture, definitely.
Okay. Facebook or Instagram?
Oh, Facebook, but probably because I've just hit 40. Ah! Oh,
Awesome. Twitter or LinkedIn?
Twitter, 100% is my absolute favourite. Love it.
Cats or dogs?
Cats. I know lots of people hate me for that. I'm so sorry.
Big night out or big night in? Not that you actually get to do either of one
I
of
was
those at
going
the
to say,
minute.
it has to be really kind of big night in, doesn't it? But in all honesty, I'd be big night in anyway. I'm
Nice.
getting old.
So, for getting your news, would you prefer to use Twitter or a newspaper?
Online news, definitely. Yeah. And probably through Twitter because you kind of follow the news that you're interested in, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love getting the discussion as well at the same time. Okay,
Sometimes depends on
well, true.
who's joining the discussion. That's how it goes.
Next question would be Michelle Obama or Kamala Harris?
Oh, that is so
That's a
tough. That's
toughie.
like choosing between my children. Um, Probably Michelle Obama because secretly, whenever we have kind of creative meetings in work, and we're like, who, if in a dream world we could have anyone speak at an event, we're always like Michelle Obama,
I love that.
like we could possibly dream.
Mm. Okay, banana bread or sourdough?
Banana bread,
Mm.
sweet girl all the way.
TikTok dances or virtual choirs?
Virtual choirs.
I know, very
Now,
wholesome, isn't it?
if you ask my team, they'd probably say TikTok dances, but I'm a virtual choir girl. Yeah.
Nice. Casual Fridays or bring your pet to work day?
Oh, bring your pet to work day. Yes,
Mm.
we're a dog-friendly office, and my boss used to bring her dog into work every day, so I really miss having a work dog
Oh,
working from home.
oh,
There's no
I'm sure.
dog to stroke at home.
I know.
Rubbish.
God. Okay, so my last question, which we ask everyone, is if you could only communicate by publicly tweeting or expressive dance, what would you choose?
Oh, I love that. Maybe publicly tweeting my expressive dance.
Oh, wow. Ooh, that's original. I like that. I like that. Looking forward to seeing
Perfect.
that content.
Yeah. Stand by.
Awesome. Well, Jo, could you tell me and the listeners a little bit more about what it is that you do at the women's organisation?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the head of marketing there. So for those who don't know the Women's Org, basically we're a charity. We're based in Liverpool, and our primary purpose is to support women's economic development. So in practice, that means we help women to start and grow businesses, or more generically to build their confidence and things like that. So I do the marketing for the organisation and manage a team there of people who market the organisation. And we also help to develop sort of courses to help women understand their marketing needs for their businesses. But as I was saying to you just before we came on the podcast, I sort of fell into marketing by accident. So
Oh, really?
when I joined the organisation, there was no marketing function. So I've kind of come at it from left field. And so, yeah, I'm one of those people who I don't have a marketing degree. Is that really bad to
No,
admit
I
on a
don't think
marketing
so.
podcast? I don't know.
No.
But yeah, I came at it just through pure hard experience and learning by failing along the way, I guess. So yeah, so
Cool.
before I worked where I work at the moment, I used to work for another organisation who helped creative businesses to start.
Hmm.
So we helped like people set up fashion houses, record labels, that kind of thing. But um, what we used to do there, which was really hip and happening at the time, was help people to set up MySpace. Do you remember MySpace?
Wow. Oh
Like
goodness.
this was
I remember
about.
it. I can't.
Do you remember
I don't know.
feeling like you were a coder? Because you used to have to do HTML code to set up your own background, you see. So you felt like a proper coder to get your like Backstreet Boys background or whatever.
Ah, the good old days. I think I probably stepped in more like Bebo. I feel like that was a
Yes, I
more
remember.
entry level MySpace.
Well, because we used to do things like that where I used to work, when I joined the women's organisation, we were like a typical charity where marketing was kind of like an afterthought, and so
Mm,
we couldn't access our own website. We used to design leaflets on Word. It was really low level, but because I'd sort of seen the possibilities of MySpace and social media as it was
mm.
beginning, I'd said to our CEO, should we have a go at Facebook? Is there any reason why we're not on Facebook? And she said, well, no, why don't you have a go at that? So I just kind of had a go. And
Mm.
12 years later, after much in-depth learning about the topic, I now lead the team. I've run my own social media marketing consultancy business. I've worked with anyone from a small business through to politicians, offering them
Wow.
advice on social media. So yeah, I think you definitely can learn organically,
Mm.
though a bit of theory and organic is probably the best
Yeah,
way around.
definitely. Definitely. So, what would you say is your favorite part of that role? Because it sounds quite like complex.
I think probably my favourite part of it is at the women's organisation, because of the nature of the charity I work for, you are really changing women's lives, and a lot of the work we do is around lobbying for equality as well.
Hmm.
So, for example, through COVID, women have been much more adversely affected by
Right.
the decisions that have been made or the impact of the virus over time. And that hasn't always been taken into consideration when they've built in the support. So we've used our social media platforms a lot for lobbying
Mm.
around the key issues that are facing women. So one example of that's going through court at the moment. I don't know if you've seen Pregnant Then Screwed, that organisation
Oh no, I
are
haven't.
currently
What's that?
taking. It's an organisation set up particularly around women's maternity rights and
Hmm.
parental rights for women. But one of the key issues when COVID hit was when the self-employed income scheme came in. They were basing it on the previous year's earnings. So
Oh,
any woman who owned their own business who'd gone on maternity leave in that year will have only
yikes.
earned a couple of quid, whereas the year before they could have earned 50, 60 grand in their business, for example.
Yeah.
And so proportionately they were disadvantaged because they'd taken maternity leave. And so that was one of the topics that we started to lobby government on, and Pregnant Then Screwed, this bigger campaign had. And it did involve a change in the circumstances where you saw the government suddenly put measures in place to say, actually, that wasn't equal, was it?
Wow.
Let's reevaluate. So changes were made, but yeah, there's currently a court case going on where Pregnant Then Screwed are suing the government over um, certain individual cases to show that it was discriminatory based
Mm.
on gender. So
That's
it's
amazing.
like cool to see the follow on from that of actually, changes can be made
Mm.
through using social media as a mouthpiece. But it also helps us to position our CEO as well as like a spokesperson when big
Yeah.
things like this happen. So that's the part I enjoy most about it, probably, is just seeing that actually you can use those channels to change the world
Mm.
in a good way.
Yeah.
Not everyone does, but yeah.
Very true. And wow, so do you think without you like having that really strong social media presence, do you think you would be able to have the same amount of impact?
Definitely not. And
Mm,
I'd say the reason for that is you can definitely expand your contact database through social media
mm,
of the types of people who you could reach out to. Like for example, we've had Helen Pankhurst, who's the great granddaughter
mm.
of one of the suffragettes, come and speak at one of our events.
That's
And
awesome.
in a normal world, that'd take us absolutely ages to kind of strip back the layers to find out, well, who knows Helen.
Mm,
Yet on Twitter, for example, you can straight away have access to these types of people because they're on there themselves, aren't they? You've got everyone from Gary Barlow to,
yeah.
you know, to the Queen. I don't know, she has her own account
Yeah, that's
started.
true. Very true.
And I
Maybe
think
I
it's just that much quicker access to people who normally would be far more arm's length, wouldn't they?
definitely. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind repeating a little anecdote that you told me just before we started recording that some of the women's organisation tweets have hit the headlines. Am I right?
Yeah, we were saying it's such like a weird thing for us because realistically speaking, we're a small charity from Liverpool, and we've really seen over the last few years the real power of social media in terms of elevating your profile and getting people to sort of take you a little bit more seriously. So particularly during the US elections, where Kamala Harris has, been elected as the first ever woman vice president,
Whoop
and
whoop.
hooray, the first woman of color, should we
Yeah.
say as well, first
Mm,
black and ethnic minority woman, which is absolutely amazing. Um, you know, for us as a women's organisation, while practically speaking, we're kind of here's the steps to start your business,
mhm.
our social media profile is around empowering women. And so we did a lot of coverage around this because it's such an exciting time
Of
as a
course.
woman to see a woman elevated to this role. And it was really amusing for us to see that some of our tweets have been used online by the likes of USA Today. One of our tweets actually featured on the Channel 4 programme, The Last Leg of the Year,
Oh
which was
wow.
featuring Kamala Harris, where we just tweeted the image of all the vice presidents to
Hmm.
date, sorry, which is, white middle aged men,
For sure.
next to a picture of Kamala Harris, um, with that how it started, how it's going type of phrase.
I love
Next
that
minute,
trend.
that's on the last leg of the year, and
There
that's
you go.
pretty cool, really, isn't it, to see your tweets used in that way. And
Yeah.
it's just that's one benefit of actually tracking your tweets as well.
Mm,
Of actually googling afterwards, that's
mm.
how we found that. We've googled our Twitter handle and we're like, wow, it's been used on USA Today. Isn't that crazy?
Do you know what? That's probably a really good tip in itself that I think many a social media would probably never think to necessarily do is to do that
Google
little
your
like
own
yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. You always hear like never Google yourself, but I suppose we aren't actually celebrities, so it might be okay. Oh no, that's a really good tip. So I feel like you've kind of already answered it in that last answer. But so why do you love social media?
I love it for so many reasons, and I think social media gets such a bad reputation because,
Mm,
okay, there are people who make it negative, etc. But especially during a pandemic, life is so isolated, isn't it? And social media is a way of connecting us with so many more people than we'd normally speak to, and helps you to keep in better touch with people. So, like on a personal level, I
mm,
speak on social media to my great aunt in Australia who I've never met but can have a relationship with because of social media. But on a business level, it's the same thing of
mm.
there's all these people who we can connect with who social media allows us to do that in terms of customers, small businesses. If you just rely on footfall past your shop front or whatever, that's a handful of people. If you can connect worldwide, that's much
Yeah.
more, isn't it? So it's kind of the power of it, I guess, and there's no limitations into how far you can grow or go, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really exciting as well. And I like thinking of it as like almost you're putting your shop front in everybody's back pocket or like
Yeah.
everybody's living room. It's, yeah, like you say, it's like the potential is endless. So we talked a little bit about like the power and possibility of social media. So are there any campaigns or any businesses that you've seen out there really killing it on social media that you want to maybe shout about a little bit?
One of my favourites through the pandemic, and I don't know if you follow them, has been Yorkshire Tea. They're
Oh,
absolutely such a cool account to follow, and I don't know if you saw them last year. And they're, for me, they're a great example of handling crisis comms on social media, because there was a moment where a particular MP had shared a picture of themselves with this box of Yorkshire Tea, and I guess one of the most difficult things in business is trying to remain sort of politically neutral, because either way you're going to isolate half of your audience,
mhm,
whichever sort of political persuasion
of
you
course.
align yourself with. And as a business, you never want to cut half of your buying audience off. And so Yorkshire Tea in this moment, an MP's picture themselves like, we're just having Yorkshire Tea. And there was absolute outrage on Twitter. It was quite astonishing to watch. But they just really cleverly answered each one with like a funny joke. And the most amusing one of the day was, I think the woman's name was Janet, I can't remember, but it was like, because everyone was like, I'm not buying your tea anymore if that MP drinks it. And in the end they were just kind of like, Janet, you're shouting at tea. And that tweet in itself just
Mm,
like trended and trended all day on Twitter,
iconic.
and it was just like a beautiful moment. And I've just watched them since then just develop and develop in that way of
Mm,
very cleverly, carefully not aligning themselves, either way politically. They never once commented on where they please that person had tweeted, a picture of them having tea. They just simply were like, guys, you're shouting at tea. And it
mm,
just was so funny. Um, and I love Innocent Smoothies in the same way. I don't know if you follow the guy from Innocent, but
I do.
I, I once heard a guy who worked there deliver a talk, and he was saying how everything they do brand wise like follows through. So if you go to their office, they have a sign above the door saying visitors and a sign above the window saying burglars. Um, and every time someone writes to Innocent head office, they handwrite them a personal letter back and include little drawings on the envelope and things. And
Fab.
that matches up with what their bottles look like, but it also matches up with their social media personality, where it's just a bit fun and quirky and things like that. And I think that's such a good lesson just watching them to
Mm.
learn is, if you're going to be quirky on social media, be quirky on your packaging, be quirky when someone turns up at your office. It's that authenticity about it, I think, that just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I actually can't believe it, but you have named two of my two favorite social media brands. Like when you said
They're
Yorkshire
so
Tea, I was like,
good.
no way. And then you said Innocent Smoothies, and I was like, no way. I could not agree more. And I remember when that Yorkshire Tea like scandal kind of happened. I mean, first I remember seeing Yorkshire Tea trending like organically and was like, huh? But yeah, I found their response to be amazing. And I think at one point they sort of gave it some time, and then they were like, somebody did a statement like, just to remind you that we're just real people. Like this is a social
Yes.
media team at a business. Like we're human beings that you're interacting with. So I just love that authenticity, and I don't know if you saw as well, but I really liked the way lots of brands sort of got involved in that. So I think the
Yes.
social
Like
media
other
team
tea.
yeah, the social media team at KFC sent them lunch, like sent
Yeah.
like to the head office of Yorkshire Tea. It's just things like that, and I thought it was a really good example. I would
Yeah.
completely agree of like being like that authentic, funny, reactive, and yeah, I think even as a business, like giving whoever is doing your social media like the confidence and like the
Yeah.
sort of strength to
Autonomy. Yeah.
autonomy. That's exactly the word I'm looking for. Yeah. And a
Yeah.
man Innocent Smoothies too, they just killed me. Their advent calendar, which was just a bunch of bottles sellotaped together with some numbers on, broke me. Just they are a perfect example of how like you don't have to have loads of campaign planning, right? You can just have a look
No,
around you and
that's
be
it.
innovative.
Yeah, one of the
Mm.
best campaigns I saw a couple of years ago was from Always,
Oh
the
yeah.
the women's
Hmm.
sanitary products. Not the most glamorous of products to talk about, but um, like I think they were a good example of an organisation who've got a big budget but show you how you can do something simple even if you
Mm.
don't have that big budget.
Yeah.
And so they did this campaign called Like a Girl. I don't know if you ever saw
No,
this.
it's familiar. Yeah.
I'd recommend looking it up on YouTube if you've not seen it yet. But it was basically just they had like a simple studio set up where they just interviewed different people, so from very young girls and boys up to women. And so they just said to them, "Can you show me how would you run like a girl? How would you throw like a girl?
Mm.
How would you fight like a girl?" And so you see people kind of like they're fighting like this, all a bit kind of daft and, like they don't know how to fight. They're
Mm.
running all a bit like immature, like they don't know how to run. And then afterwards, they sort of start to ask them questions about why they made that choice. So
Wow.
they said to like the
Oh my
little
God, got
boy,
goosebumps
like,
then.
do you think you've just offended your sister? And to a woman, is that really how you run? Type of thing. Is
Mm.
that really how you throw? And actually, they then start to think about it more and they say, at what point in your life does like a girl become an offensive thing?
Mm.
And at what point do we tell ourselves that to be like a girl is lesser? And at what point do we tell ourselves that we're nowhere near as good? Or that actually, if we do things like a girl, that it's not a positive? And suddenly you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
crying your eyes out, like, why have I hindered myself or whatever? And it's such an amazing campaign. But the
Yeah.
cleverness about it is, A, the simplicity, B, they tap into something that we can all identify with. Even men all look at that and think, oh, yeah, I can see that in my daughter. I can see that I visualize women in that way, and why do
Mm.
I? But it also so cleverly links back to their product, because the timing that we start to tell ourselves that, because if you look at it, you'll see the little kids just run like themselves.
Mm.
It's the grown-ups who run like, oh, I'm a silly
Yeah.
woman and I'm running like this type of thing.
Hmm.
And so they cleverly tie it in with actually it's puberty. And around that time when we suddenly make this switch and our confidence is torn, and that hits with their product. And it's so clever because it stands on its own as this Like a Girl campaign. And suddenly it was trending on Twitter when they ran it, because they then invited people to say, tell us something great you do, hashtag Like a Girl. And so suddenly you had, like astronauts,
Yeah.
women, like, I'm an astronaut, hashtag Like a Girl. I'm a rocket scientist, hashtag Like a Girl.
Oh,
I'm an Olympic gold medalist, hashtag Like a Girl. And suddenly you've got goosebumps and you're thinking,
literally.
yes, I can achieve. And always round, I just loved it. It was a fantastic campaign.
Yeah, that sounds really fantastic. I love that. I mean, because whenever you see those campaigns that are like tapping into social issues, sometimes like there's a little bit of skepticism. I'm like, well, this is really good for your brand sentiment, isn't it? But then the other side of that coin is, well, they could easily just spend all of that money and do a campaign that's like, just self-serving, whereas that campaign has like a huge positive effect. Like even us discussing it years later, like I just got a little like, oh, isn't it amazing?
I'm
Like a little
like a
moment.
girl in a good way.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I really love to see a brand like. I think it's everyone wins, right? When they
Yeah,
when they
that's
sort of
it.
put that sort of focus on it. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. So I know you were telling me a little bit before our call that one of the things that you really specialize in your role at the women's organization was helping people use social media to try and generate like PR opportunities and like make those kinds of connections. So I was just wondering if you could explain that a little bit more because I think it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, sure. And this kind of journeys back to something I was saying earlier around one of the great things about social media is the possibility of the people you can connect with. So I think time gone by, it'd take you years to kind of build a database of journalists who you'd then
Mm.
send a formal press release to if you've got news, hope that they respond. If they don't, you know, you're chasing up with a cheesy email that they're probably cringing at. But in reality, you know, you've got a channel like Twitter where most major journalists have their own account on there. And so it's much quicker to A, find their contact details, and B, get in touch with them. So even if they're the type of people who'd ignore an email, if you can, you know, connect with them enough to build synergy on social media, they may follow you. You might be able to direct message them,
Mm.
slide into their DMs, as we say. And I think that way, so for instance, with our organisation, what we've started to use our Twitter platform now is like over the last year through coronavirus, there's so many opportunities to position your business as a spokesperson when larger news happens. So every time Boris has done one of his dreaded announcements, you know, that we all sit around dreading, well,
Mm.
that's actually been a great opportunity for our business in the sense of straight away we'll look at, well, what are the issues that are pertaining to our audience? And so straight away we can knock up a quick statement from our CEO, get it out straight away on social media, tag in the journalists we think will be interested in that particular statement. And that way you've sort of cut out so many layers, haven't you, in
Yeah.
terms of having to sit for hours and write a press release. And that way, if a journalist is writing a bigger story but just looking for a little something to slot in it, you're in there straight away. So you're building your contact list, you're building your profile in that sort of sense. Twitter is definitely the best platform for that. And
Yeah.
still, I'd recommend following hashtag journey request. I don't know how many
Mm.
people still have a look at that, but it's such a great way of finding PR opportunities for yourself. So every day on Twitter, journalists will tweet hashtag journey request with
Mhm.
what they're looking for, won't they? And, you know, we've had our clients in national newspapers as a result of just, you see a journalist tweet, you know, I want to speak to a woman who fits this particular profile, and you simply need to tweet them back, I can help you with that, you know.
Mhm.
And that's the easiest and quickest way to build PR profile, particularly if you're a small business. You don't have huge budget, do you? So you're looking for the quick wins, really, because your
Mhm.
time's precious as well. And that is such a simple way, you know, follow the journalists who you'd love to have them write about you. Make a note if they've got their email address in their Twitter bio. Follow hashtag journey requests. And in terms of following the journalists that you know would love to write about you, you can see the types of stories they're writing more easily, so you can kind of track what's going to actually interest them. So instead of sending them a boring story that's of no interest to them
Yeah.
because someone else is going to write about that, you can see exactly what will hit the nail on the head for that particular journalist and pitch something to them that's great. But also just in terms of like I mentioned earlier, we've had Dr. Helen Pankhurst come and speak at one of our events. You know, we've had all kinds of people who, if it weren't for social media, we wouldn't necessarily have those people speaking at our events, you know. And you know, we're a charity with very definite aims. So our version of celebrity is a Helen Pankhurst, you know, someone who's a great granddaughter of a suffragette. But in
Mhm.
terms of other businesses, you know, you can tap easily into influencers. And I used to run my own social media marketing business for a little while, and some of the businesses I consulted for then were totally different than the one I work for now, you know, like estate agency, insurance, blah. And so like literally one of the clients I had, her target audience was mums. Basically the product she was selling was relevant for mums. And so we use social media literally to just target celebrity mums and get them to follow or retweet us. And that quickly saw the return in terms of building her following numbers, which in turn builds sales. And it's so easy in a way. It's just kind of
Mm.
flattering celebrities on social media. You know, we
Okay.
tweet at these celebrity mums like, aren't you so great with everything that you're juggling? You know, you're a businesswoman
Mm.
and you've got all these children and you're doing such a great job. And because you flatter them, next minute they're retweeting. And that's PR again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or getting these people to come along to your events or finding ways to send them your product. It's just such a great way of getting in touch with people you wouldn't otherwise. Um, Yeah.
No, yeah, that's, oh goodness, there was a lot of gems of wisdom in there for sure. And I think Twitter is a tough platform, I would say. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of businesses are really like debate whether or not to even be present on there because they're like, I don't know what to do. Or like, what's the focus, right? Because I
Yeah.
know a lot of people use Twitter as like a customer services platform,
Yeah.
like, or like you say, sort of disseminating like information, like that kind of like press release kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's like fascinating and like using it integrally as a PR platform, I think would be pretty revolutionary for a lot of businesses. And like you say, it probably doesn't take as much time as it you maybe think it does. Even if you dedicated like a little
Yeah.
bit of time to that sort of activity every day or every week, I'm sure you'd see some
And
sort of positive return on that.
I think that's the big fear, particularly for small businesses, is whenever you talk social media strategy, they straight away say, "Oh, how long is this going to take me?" Isn't it?
Mm,
Because they're so busy juggling so many other balls
yeah.
of their bookkeeping, tax returns, all those horrible things, as well
Mm,
as
the
actually
actual
doing the
business, yeah.
service that they're being paid to do. But as you say, like one of my biggest pieces of advice for small businesses is always decide yourself how much time you're going to dedicate to social media and stick to it. So
Yeah.
if it's an hour a week and that's realistically all you can dedicate, just make the most of that 1 hour a week. So make sure that you spend 10 minutes surfing through those hashtag journey requests, another 20 minutes answering any questions that people have sent you, the other 30 minutes scheduling your content, and just make sure that you're really focused in that time, because social media can take you all day every day,
Of
or
course.
you can make it focused and really matter. And I think it's just being realistic about the time you have and making the most of that sort of opportunity, really. um
Absolutely. I think probably the step one to that is sort of identifying that how essential it is because
yeah.
I think a lot of businesses and individuals just don't still, surprisingly, after a year of, being locked in the house, like still don't maybe acknowledge the power of social
Yes.
media. Would you agree with that?
Definitely, and we're certainly seeing, businesses who've never bothered before, and it might even be like your local cafe, for example,
Mm,
who've normally relied on footfall past their doors, have now had to become a delivery service, and you can't possibly do that without getting online. What is your menu, and how do people order, and how do they pay? And
mhm.
social media is absolutely the quickest way to do that, and I think it's the same for any business at the moment, particularly if you're not on social media. You don't really exist to people because they're so far removed from what you're doing. So you've got to get yourself out there in the nicest possible way. But it's a balance, isn't it? Because as well, I always find that small businesses straight away, they'll have gone online and read up about all social media, and they're like, "Oh, TikTok's this latest thing, isn't it? I've heard
Yeah.
all the kids are on TikTok. Maybe I should be TikToking." And so they're like dancing away, and you're like, "Well, what do you do?" "I'm a tax accountant." "Right, okay. Well, do you think your audience are on TikTok?" I don't know that they are. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that no tax accountant has ever got a client off TikTok. I'm sure there will be one who will show that that's the exception to the rule. But it's definitely knowing your customer and where they are. But coming back to what we were saying about Twitter, I think there's different purposes for different platforms.
Of
So
course.
while, say, your product is fashion aimed at really, a teen market, for example, and so really you're spending your time on TikTok and Instagram to get your clients, it doesn't mean that you can't use Twitter for a different purpose of like
Yeah.
that PR strategy. And I guess it's kind of with everything saying, this platform, here's the audience of that platform, and here's my purpose of being on there. And okay, your brand should sort of seamlessly link across platforms, but your content should be different, shouldn't it, depending on the
100%
audience
agree.
and the purpose.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, definitely. I know Giraffe Social Media, we can agree more with that. And I think that's another thing as well, is like sometimes it's okay to like not have the time to do it. If
Yeah.
you can identify how important it is, then maybe you really should be like investing some time into it, whether you bring someone into the team, whether you consult, whether you like go to an agency, or like go to an organization like yourselves. I think it's undeniable right now that social
Yeah.
media, you just can't not be on there if you want to adapt. I think especially to I would say, I was about to say hashtag 2020, but now 2021, and let's hope not 2022. That
Yeah,
gosh,
definitely.
yeah,
I would say to people, if you haven't got the time, look at what you can outsource.
yeah,
And I guess it's just when you're working with a social media company, like always be clear about what you want, because I think sometimes people feel so frustrated when they outsource certain things, but
hmm,
it's often because they haven't been clear in the outset. And I remember when I was working freelance myself, I literally spent 6 months with one of my clients meeting weekly, and
yeah,
every week I'd ask her the same question until I got the answer, which was, what is it you want to achieve? What
yeah,
is it? What is the purpose of this? What is it you want to get out of it? And I'd just repeat that question weekly. And each week she wouldn't really give me the answer. So I'd kind of feel my way and do things that I thought were useful for her business. But it was only after 6 months she was kind of like, oh, from those things you've done, actually, that's probably the one.
gosh,
And
that's a
I
little
guess
frustrating.
it's like my advice to people using an external marketing company would
Mm,
always be very clear in who your
yeah,
audience is, what's your purpose, and what's your values. Even down to, we talk in marketing, don't we, about like personas, marketing personas, and
hmm,
things like that. And, if you can introduce your business like you were introducing a person and say, my business, Belinda, let's call her. I see her as funny, outgoing, sociable, bubbly. Have I repeated that word? Probably. Loves a glass of gin on a Friday. It just helps the person who's working on your marketing strategy to better understand you, and even down to, here's things we would associate ourselves with, here's things we'd never associate ourselves with, here's our motivation, here's our values,
yeah,
so that they can really understand who you are. I always remember in one of our courses, I sat down a business partnership and they were just starting out in business. And I set them this as a challenge and I said, just each of you write down 10 words to describe your business as though you were introducing your business like a person to me.
hmm,
And they were both furiously writing away and they looked very pleased with themselves. And then I said, right, okay, so tell me what you've got. And so the first one wrote down, we're professional, organised, methodical, knowledgeable. And you could see the other one was looking at her like, really? I said, well, what have you got? And she had pink, fluffy, approachable, fun, bubbly. And you could just see like they were both looking at each other like, is that
yeah,
how you see our business?
wow,
And to this day, I genuinely can't remember what the business was because of this.
that's
But
funny. That shows
that
you,
is
doesn't
kind
it?
of um, particularly in business partnerships, but I think again when you work with like an external marketer or when you bring a new person in on your team, you kind of have this assumption that they know who you are as an organization,
Yeah,
but in reality often you don't know yourself until you put it down on paper and say, actually I want to be this.
yeah,
But you can see how if those two different people use their social media channels, one day it'd be like 10 top tips on tax returns, and the next day it'd be a water ski and hamster. And before long, your social media presence is just like, what the heck are they even
scattered.
about?
Yeah, no, for sure.
And it chips away at customer trust, doesn't it? Because you feel like, I don't know who that organisation is. So coming back to the brands that we were looking at before, like Innocent and Yorkshire Tea, for example, you can see with them, no matter what platform you find them on, it's exactly the same personality across those. The values are the same. There's that same thread, isn't there? That you know exactly
Definitely.
who they are as a brand, and you're not kind of wondering why is it that one day and this the next.
Mm.
It's authentic, isn't it? Coming back to that word, it's the authenticity of it.
For sure. I think one of my last questions for you then is, obviously you work at the women's organisation, so I'm just wondering if you think there's any sort of key aspect of why being present on social and like marketing yourself is really important for like female-led businesses.
I mean, generally speaking, I hate that. Generally speaking, you know, we as women don't often put ourselves forward in the same way as men. Now, obviously, that's an extreme generalization, but
Yeah.
It is a fact of the matter.
Yeah.
You put a woman and a man up for the same job, and a man will over talk his skills, and a woman will undersell a lot of the time. And I think for women, putting yourself out there on social media, but embracing that idea of I'm an expert and I'm a spokesperson, coming back to what I was saying about our CEO commenting on the news,
Yeah.
that's something you've got to embrace and put yourself forward if you want your business to grow. But it's also that uniqueness of being a woman in business. That's one reason we exist as a charity, is women are still massively underrepresented in business. And when we started 26 years ago, our CEO had to go to a business networking event and be the only woman in the room, or the only one of two among 100. And it is increasing, more women do own businesses, but it's still only about 20% of businesses owned by women.
Mm.
And so we've got to compete out there, but realise being a woman makes us unique in business as well. And so one of our clients, who I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning her because she's an absolutely fabulous woman, has a business called The Pink Plasterer. And she's one of the few women in the industry. I think she was one of the first
Oh,
women
cool.
to set up her own business as a plasterer. And she's still one of the very few within the industry, a woman plasterer. But she's very much used this to her unique advantage. Of there's loads of people who'd much prefer to have a woman come into their home. Elderly people, for example. Not that there's anything wrong with men, or that they're going to
No, of
attack the
course.
elderly or anything, but it is just like a comfort level sometimes. Is
Yeah.
women are perhaps perceived to be less of a threat perhaps than a man. And there's different reasons why, sort of, marketing coming from a marketing perspective, there's messages you can put out there of woman-led business coming into your home. And certain people might feel safer, even in terms of people who've formerly been victims of domestic abuse. That's a better example of a legitimate reason why you'd prefer a woman. Those people would prefer a woman to come into their home. And so it's actually taking the fact that I'm a woman and I can have a different perspective, or there's a different reason to use me. Social media can really be powerful for that. So she's used it again for PR, coming back to that moment that we spoke about before. And she even became the specialist plasterer on, I think it was a Channel 5 renovation programme. And she's been interviewed by BBC, all different news outlets around why did she go into this industry, and why does she think it's important for young girls to have role models within the construction
Mm.
industry, because it's not something that you find every day, a woman doing. And she's a bloody good plasterer, if I'm allowed
I'm
to
sure
use
she
that
is,
word,
yes.
sorry. She's a really good plasterer. So, she's an award-winning plasterer, and she gets a lot of flack for it, I have to say. And there's still men within the industry who are outraged, at the idea there's a woman doing this. This
Oh,
is
wow.
outrageous. But she's paving her way and she's making her name because she's a woman standing out in that industry.
And
And
really marketing
just
herself.
that's it. And just by being a woman in business and pushing that forward, that actually I'm a trailblazer, and using your social media platforms to promote that, there's power behind that can grow your business.
Awesome. Well, I think we have time for maybe one more quick question, and that would be, do you have any thoughts on the future of social media? I know we're in like this weird buzzword, unprecedented time, but yeah, do you have any thoughts of like where we could go next, what we can expect to see?
I mean, I dread. I dread what's coming forward. I always say the day you make me have a TikTok for our organisation, I think I may retire, because, and I always say to the CEO, I will give us a TikTok the day you're prepared to dance on it. But definitely, I think you've seen over the last few years the way social media has changed, and just digital in general. People want to sort of have choice about what they access, don't they? And so
Mm.
definitely where this sort of on-demand viewing is is coming more to the fore, and especially while we're stuck at home, everyone's Netflixing and, you know, all the rest of it, aren't they? I definitely think there'll be a closer relationship between social media and kind of the on-demand world. And you can see it already, can't you, with the introduction of Instagram TV.
Yeah.
And, you know, Facebook kind of has this TV kind of scrolling, you know, you can watch
Yeah.
things, can't you, on there. I think that'll marry even closer together, where the two become one. To quote the Spice Girls. And
I love that.
well, it's like your phone. Years ago, if someone had told you your phone would also be a calculator, a torch, your camera, you know, your game apps,
A map, yeah. The
yeah.
bank.
Yeah, sat nav, exactly. You'd have thought that was ludicrous, but I definitely think with technology, it's this integration, isn't it? Of the more things are integrated and simplified, you know, that's the way technology works, doesn't it? So I think you'll see even closer integration. And TikTok's kind of probably a bit of that, isn't it? It's like the fun things that we want to watch in a snippet, but maybe that'll extend.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Maybe. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for those insights. And well, I think that's actually all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for joining me, Jo. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And
Wonderful.
I get a bit too excited talking about social media.
Oh no, we love that here. We made a whole podcast so we have a place to talk about it. So yeah, no, that's fantastic. So thanks everyone for listening along at home. Don't forget you can subscribe so you don't miss our next episodes. You can also connect with us on all major social channels and let us know what you thought about any of the topics we discussed today. We've been Draft Social Media. You've been amazing. We'll see you next time.